be able to drive change into a topic, you also need to have skills to do that. And all change requires learning, I think, looking at all the technological shifts we have had.
Welcome to another episode of the Stay Hungry podcast, the podcast that delves into human-centric learning and how to build and sustain a learning organization where a growth mindset is the foundation. This podcast is for business leaders focused on driving growth and change that truly matters within their organization. At the heart of every conversation is the idea that continuous learning is essential to spark innovation and boosting both organizational and individual performance. In today's episode, we'll explore how motivation impacts learning and how engagement in learning is linked to long-term success by aligning personal and organizational goals. Let's welcome Frida Monsén to the show. Frida is a renowned leader who helps major organizations transform their learning strategies. She's also a TEDx speaker and the author of 2 books on digital learning. With a background in both corporate learning and education, she brings valuable insights to the table. I'm Marcus Almén, your host, and let's kickstart this episode right away with our new guest. Hi, Frida, and welcome to the show. Super happy to have you here, and I can't wait to dig into today's topics. But before we do, please tell me about how you got into L&D and a little bit about your background.
Thank you so much for having me, Marcus. I really look forward to this conversation. And yes, my background is within education and teaching, and that's where I started out 20 years from now. But after a while, I got really interested in adults learning and what happens after outside the educational school system. And from that, I started to work more within on the business side, working with events for adult learning, for lifelong learning. I worked within tech companies and so on. But especially when I worked within tech and learning tech, I also got really curious and interested in what does the organization need to really adapt and benefit from all the technologies out there. And that is how I got interested in L&D. So I started actually as a consultant on the consultant side, helping out with strategies for learning. But I then felt that I really wanted to be on the inside of the organization, because as a consultant, you sometimes come in and you do some work and you deliver a strategy, but you can't be there and see how it's really creating a difference on the other side. And that's what's brought me inside L&D to really be part of the organization and implement the strategies.
Super interesting. Thank you for your introduction, Frida. And let's dive into today's topic and start with the foundations of motivation in the workplace. And motivation is the driving force behind employee engagement, performance, and ultimately success of an organization, right? And in today's fast-paced business world, understanding what motivational employees actually do is more crucial than ever. Whether it's internal motivation or external incentives, the psychology behind this can create deep impact in the organizational outcomes. I want to dig into and start understanding the motivational psychology and why it's so important for organizations out there. And how can leaders foster a motivated and engaged workforce, you believe?
Yes, so you started out like the key is engagement somehow, and by understanding motivational psychology, that is your key to also understand how to engage your employees, basically. And this understanding can also help you when you look at the organizational design somehow, because how we design for work, for interactions, and for people to be the best versions of themselves, that is also something that can be really helped by applying the perspective of motivational psychology in the context of work. Because you also mentioned like the difference between external motivation, for example, and how to trigger more of internal motivation, because that is what really drives long-term engagement and success. If you manage to to really activate the internal motivation among your employees.
Can you give us a key differences between internal and external motivation, just to understand that concept a little bit better?
Yeah, sure. So external motivation, as the name implicates, it's something that comes from the outside of you. So that could be like in a work context, it could be like if I am primarily motivated by a bonus or a salary raise, or maybe to get praise and recognition for something that I do, if that is really important in the structures, and that is what mainly drives you to do work, or the fear of something, that the external motivation is really linked to the theory called behaviorism. The model that we see is like the carrot or the whip, basically. It's a reward that you get, or something that you feel that you are forced to do. So that is like basically the extreme version of external motivation. And if you go more into the opposite, the internal motivation, that is you working for something that's coming from your own motivations, that you really see that the work that you do is important and meaningful, both for you, that you feel fulfilled by doing the work, but also that you do something that creates an impact for the company that you work in, or for society as a whole. And there's also theoretical theories that are more like leaning towards the internal motivational side. I like to apply the self-determination theory, for example, which is basically stating that the people need to feel autonomy, that they can control and impact what they do during a work day, but they also want to feel competent. So the work that I'm doing is also a good match with my skills and what I think that I can contribute with, but it's also connectedness. So do I feel that I have a meaningful context at work, a social context where I also create value together with other people? So basically, if you want to use models for behavioral science or motivational psychology, those are the two linked to either internal or external motivation that you could use.
Mm. Why is it important for organizations to really understand the motivational psychology and the combination of internal and external motivations, you believe?
Yeah, I think, and it's important that you say the combination, because I do think that if we want to like use behavioral science and motivational psychology to drive results, we sometimes need to a little bit of both of those. That like the core design of the organization should definitely be shaped towards having like the right people on the right place doing the right thing, and really build upon the collaboration around that. But for example, if I want to create a fast change, I have a strong sense of urgency to move a certain topic forward, I could add a little bit of external motivation to that. For example, in regards of how we create incentives in the organization for leaders or employees, because what we do recognize and put appreciation towards, that is also what is more likely to be done. So if I have a lot of focus on like result-oriented goals, but not providing a clear path how to reach that, or what are the competence needed to go there, I might lack some. But if I can use those two in combination to both have really clear business goals to be achieved, but also like the path that is more connected to the inner side of motivation, where I can use my skills and knowing how to achieve that, that could be really, really powerful. So the more you know about like the two sides of this and how to work with them to create strong incentives and sense of engagement for your employees, the better chance to actually become successful. I saw a recent research from Gallup stating, I think it was that engaged teams are 23% more profitable, or engaged organizations, than those who have a low engagement score, and teams being up to 18% more productive. So engaged teams create a healthier working environment. They feel better around each other. And from an individual perspective as well, if you do get to work with things that triggers your inner motivation and keeps you engaged over time, there's research from Stockholm University showing that you also have a better career development over time than those who is not working with things that trigger their inner motivation. So there is plenty of benefits both from the organizational perspective down to the individual. A win-win, I would say.
And motivation obviously affects learning as well.
Yeah, so speaking of learning and the role that learning have in many organizations, a lot of companies have some trainings that are really important from a compliance perspective, for example, that you really need to do them. And that is often maybe not the most motivating experience for employees, because maybe you don't see the importance, or you just feel like it's something external that is put upon you. But I want to be really clear that I don't say that compliance training is not important, because it's key for a lot of businesses, including the business at Vattenfall, of course. But sometimes we forget to also add like the element of motivation to these trainings. We sometimes see them more like a tick in the box, some things that we have to do, but actually we could do a lot by working with these in a more engaging and motivational way as well. But on the other side of learning and training and motivation, you have what we talk about as self-directed learning. And self-directed learning comes more from to learn things that triggers your interest, that sparks your inner motivation in different parts, and that is also as equally important for a company to provide that as it is to provide trainings that are like mandatory due to regulations or whatever other standards or needs for your business, if you want engaged employees, that is.
What roles do you think leadership do have in fostering a motivated and engaged team?
Wow. What role do they not have? It's like the leaders of the organization are so important. If I, as an employee, will be motivated to learn, I really need to see also the why of the organization. But sometimes the why and the goals of the organization are really high level. And as a leader, I need to take these goals and break them down and make them tangible for the team to understand how can they really contribute to the goals of the organization. Learning tends to sometimes be a separate box, and the planning and the KPIs and things that you do around learning is one thing, and you don't connect it to the business part. And I think that a lot of companies also miss the link between the learning activities being done to the critical capability that it's going to support, and the business need behind that critical capability or skill needed to develop. So the full analysis, like the chain from this is our business goals, this is what we're going to do, this is the skills, the critical capabilities that we need, these are the people who we need to grow, these are their motivations and goals, and to package all this and view it holistically. And that is also really like speaking of behavioral science and theory, and like the power of small wins to break something big down to smaller pieces. But it's also as a leader to be there and to apply coaching and feedback on the learning journey, and be really interested and be a part of setting the goals, because even if I have to understand the motivations and goals of my employees, and in some way I could be a part of like coaching and steering a bit to also see that it aligns with company goals, but without like saying, hey, this is the path that you should or have to focus on. And another part of the role of the leaders of a company would be also the culture that I create for my employees to feel safe to learn, like the psychological safety of the team or of the group, or like the company culture as a whole, depending on what kind of leadership role you have in the company, because learning would also, of course, be connected to sometimes trying out things that you are not really sure of, or don't feel that you are certain how to do, and that would also include that you feel safe to sometimes fail, and to learn from that as well. So yeah, I think leaders, from everything from like setting and breaking down goals, the coaching, the feedback, but also making sure that we as a team has the right skills.
Learning comes in different size and shapes, right? Depending on what you're working with, and depending on the organization, there are changes happening. And I think learning could be a clear business driver when it comes to upskilling and reskilling, but also to, in general, adopt to change, right?
Yeah, definitely.
How do you see the correlation between change management and learnings in your organization?
Wow. I tend to get into those discussions all the time right now, Marcus. It's really,
Interesting.
really, really interlinked, I would say, because if you are going to take the role and be a leader of change or drive change, and that could be as a leader, a manager, but also if you work in HR, for example, and are supporting the business with these topics, you also need to gain knowledge and skills around the topic that you are going to create, to lead change around. So, and I guess it comes as no surprise that one of these topics that is on many companies' agenda right now is AI and the transformation and change in regard to that. So so it both like it's both skills and learning on many levels, from like knowing technology as such and the impact it could have on your business, but it's also like being able to work as a role model and apply it in your business. And all of this has to be like learning that you also gain before you can be a confident leader of change, where you also communicate the why of the organization and so on. So to be able to drive change into a topic, you also need to have skills to do that. And all change requires learning. I think looking at all the technological shifts we have had.
Interesting. So, what's your take on this from this perspective on Vattenfall? How do you work with change management there, and how do you work to create engagement around the changes that are happening, but also connecting that to your business and your overall goals? Another huge
Mm.
question for you, Frida, but I think this
Yeah,
is
to break
such
it
an
down
interesting
into
topic. Yeah.
Yeah, it is an interesting topic. And first of all, we have to acknowledge that Vattenfall is a really big company and it's really diverse. So I wouldn't say that I can talk for change at Vattenfall as a whole, but I can speak from what we are doing right now from the L&D function, and how we try to collaborate with the business around this. I think it's a multidisciplinary journey somehow, where we drive several change initiatives parallel, where one is just how we drive learning, like the view of learning, to get from the perspective that learning has to be a conference or a course, or something like that, to something built into the daily work, build a design that actually works over time, and so on, but also the connection to the technological shift that we are in. And we do know that, for example, AI is a key technology for the energy business and for Vattenfall as a company. So to apply that and understand that from a business perspective is really key. And again, one part is the technical skills that we are pretty well equipped as a company. So I think that from our perspective, the focus now is more like to create then interest and engagement and excitement around this, like this really, really interesting phase that we as a company are in right now to the people that are more on the business side, that is not necessarily working on the technical side. So they also want to be a part of this and explore possibilities and also, of course, gain knowledge around this.
Do you have any special strategies or tips for the listeners to actually engage your employees, your teams, and the entire organization to feel that the change is something that we can embrace? How do you spark that curiosity within the framework?
Yeah, so one thing would be to really also find the people in the organization that you can collaborate with, to work with subject matter experts in different parts of the company that also represent different business areas and so on, and also bringing them together so they can also meet and share ideas and create their networks and so on. So that would be one key initiative, to not try to do this alone as an L&D function, or only bringing external experts in or whatever. So to really work with because a lot of people are really passionate about what they do, and when they get an arena and the stage to stand on and share their message, more people get engaged as well. And the other tip would be to also try to be a bit different about it, to actually work it, to do it a bit fun and playful, and yeah, just because you're a large corporate company with a lot of engineers in, for example, it doesn't have to be really technical and stiff. You can still have a playful approach, trying to build more around, like, it's actually about communication, creativity, collaboration, and critical thinking. And we all know those skills, but what do they mean in the age of AI, for example? So then people can feel, again, applying this self-determination theory, they can feel a bit competent again. Oh, I know these, but I'm going to take them and add them to the new.
Mm. You mentioned the playfulness when embracing change and working with learning. Can you give us a
Yeah.
few examples on how you approach the playfulness in learning?
Yeah. So, yeah, one example is a collaboration I do with a unit within Vattenfall, with the product managers and agile coaches, and and they were also my collaborators there was, please don't make it boring. That was one of the first thing in our planning meeting. So there we are, like, more taking on like the Dragon's Den approach, and doing a challenge-based workshop where we more put like having them stimulate like the to choose what kind of tools or things would we like to use towards the background of security, instead of doing like, this is security training, you have to think of this and this is really important, to start, well, okay, this is like the fact, this is the baseline, based on this, what choices would you make, and then put them up for this pitch competition to solve some actual business challenges with the support of AI tools from their choice, but with the knowledge then of what is the company restrictions and so on, and then have the dragons do the judgment of who created the most innovative pitch, for example. So
That's a very good approach. Do you involve the leaders in the organization as well? I'm thinking about the C-level. Are they involved in these strategies to really emphasize the importance of learning and motivation as well?
yes, yes, definitely. I think it's a key message also from C-level, that this is important, and that they themselves also are eager to learn and understand what would make them also more more efficient in their roles in regards to AI, for example.
Mm. So back to the designing of success for when learning and connecting that to motivation. And you mentioned it a little bit previously here. We do have formal learning and we do have informal learning. And to me, it seems like informal learning can be very playful and sort of act in different shapes and sizes within the organization. But when it comes to mandated and formal learning, we go back to compliance there. How can organizations face compliance? Because obviously, compliance is also something that can differ. You can comply with
Mm.
a lot of things, right?
Yeah,
Industry
yeah. Mm.
standards or legislations or best practices, right? But
Yeah.
how can organizations really ignite and spark that attention around compliance so that people also want to throw themselves at these knowledge pieces to learn something new?
Yeah, I think you almost said it. Because when something is important and if we make it compliant, then we should also put some focus into making it engaging and really good training so we make sure that people learn from the training and not just do it because of ticking a box. And yeah, we do know that learning, for example, requires often a different setup with a lot of different components. To just have an e-learning or just a one-day course training in a classroom is seldom the best way to have people learn something. That is often like a tick in the box. But if you work with a combination of a lot of different components of learning, you increase the likelihood that it will actually change the behavior or have an effect on how the employee do their work or whatever. So to see what kind of behaviors do we want to change, what are the knowledge needed for that, and how can we also continue to enhance and reinforce that behavior or knowledge going forward.
So, do you think learning can become something that is useful for motivating the employees?
Yes, I do. And we do see that year after year also when we do when companies do surveys on what is important for employees when they look for a job and so on, that learning is a key factor for them when choosing an employer. So that is like from like attracting employees to your company, but also to make them stay, to also provide growth opportunities. And again, speaking about like the view of learning, it doesn't mean that everyone has to be on a conference or a course or do this full program. It can also be about like, and then leadership comes in again as well. How do I make sure that my employees can really step into projects that stretches their competence and is aligned with their career interests? Can I at my company, they are also really interested in rotating to have employees give employees the possibility to test new positions in different parts of the company and so on. So yeah, focus on learning and growing is really key, I would say.
Interesting, Frida. We're approaching the end of the podcast here, and I think this is fantastic. Today's conversation has been really, really insightful, focusing on motivation in the workplace from engagement to performance. And we have been discussing how internal and external motivation drive employee engagement and the impact of self directed learning and the crucial role of the leadership. Frida, you shared so much valuable advice here today, and I'm sure our listeners have plenty to take away and apply. Thank you so much. But before we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to add to our listeners out there?
I think we have been having a nice discussion. I really appreciate your questions and interest in this topic as well. So I think we will not open another box now. So maybe for a future conversation.
Thank you again, Frida, for sharing your expertise with us. And for those of you who are listening, you can find more about Frida, including her TED Talks and insights on learning and motivation, by connecting with her on LinkedIn or visiting the links in the description below. And thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to share your feedback and let us know who you'd like to see in the show in the future. Tune in to our upcoming episodes in Spotify app or visiting learnster.com. And see you next time. And then until then, stay curious, keep learning, and as always, stay hungry for knowledge.